So good morning and welcome everyone to our family caregiving webinar today on the topic of managing resistance. My name is Carrie McClellan. I'm the outreach manager for ElderHelp, and I am looking forward to sharing today's topic with you all and introducing you to our guest speaker, Jean Alton, in just a moment. As I mentioned before, this isn't a webinar platform, so we do encourage questions and we will go through those at the end of the presentation. So feel free to type them into the question pane as we go throughout. And that way at the end, I'll read through those and we'll get your questions answered. So hopefully that works for everybody. So just before I do introduce Jean and we get started on today's topic, I wanted to share a little bit about ElderHelp and why we do these webinars. So ElderHelp's mission is to provide personalized services and information that help seniors remain independent and live with dignity in their own homes. So we have a lot of programs that focus on supporting seniors directly in their homes out in the community. And in doing so, we've also had the opportunity to support family members and family caregivers who are looking for resources and helping their aging loved ones navigate. So we are always looking at different ways that we can connect people with information, education, and direct services. So this is an overview of the core services that ElderHelp offers. We offer information and referral. We do offer daily check-in calls. We have nutrition services that provides pantry deliveries as well as grocery shopping assistance. We have a transportation program called Seniors A Go-Go. Our care coordination program provides ongoing services in the home. And then we offer housing support as well. And the reason that we offer these types of webinars is, as I mentioned, we get a lot of calls from family members who are caring for a loved one at any stage in that journey. So maybe they're starting to worry about an aging loved one, or they're providing day-to-day care and looking for resources. So we're always happy to connect people with other community resources and education that might be helpful for their situation. These webinars are especially important because we are able to bring in guest speakers like Jean, who I'll introduce in a moment, who can share expertise and really talk more about the specific topics that that individuals need to know about and want to know about. Dementia is something that is becoming more prevalent in our community, and I know in my experience that I find a lot of family caregivers are caring for a loved one living with dementia. So we're excited to have Jean here to be able to share with today's topic on managing resistance. And we're grateful for our partnership with Alzheimer's San Diego. So with that, I will do a proper introduction. So Jean Alton has worked in the field of Alzheimer's disease and related dementias for over 30 years. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology and in recreation therapy, and is a certified positive approach to care dementia trainer. Jean's expertise is built upon her many years of experience working in a variety of settings, including memory care in facilities, adult social day programs, early memory loss programs, and care management. Jean is a senior dementia educator with Alzheimer's San Diego, where she provides community education and coordinates programs for people with early stage dementia. And if you've heard Jean speak before, you know she always brings in really good examples and relates to different situations that are going on in your caregiving journey. So Jean, welcome. We're so happy to have you here, and look forward to learning from you again today.
Very much, Carrie, and I am always happy to partner with ElderHelp and with Carrie and to bring just good information to all of you folks from both of our organizations. So let's get going because we have lots to talk about today. So our topic is managing resistance, and you know, a lot of what I am talking about today is in reference to managing resistance in people living with a diagnosis of some type of dementia. But I think there's lots of lessons in this presentation that we can take and apply to aging people, whether that's ourselves or spouses or siblings, parents, whoever it may be. So I want you to think in kind of broader terms about resistance and what that means as we are growing older. So we are going to focus on the causes of resistance in people who are living with dementia and talk about some techniques for effective communication. We'll go over briefly some tips to be able to better provide assistance to somebody who's telling you, no, I don't need your help. And then we'll talk a little bit about other resources. So we'll go to the next slide. And so the causes of resistance in people living with some type of dementia. So why is it difficult? Caring for a person with dementia is hard. And I'll get you to just keep clicking through the slide, Carrie. And why is it so hard? Why is it so challenging? Because there's many different things going on a regular basis and on a daily basis involving change. And so let's take a look at some of those points. So the day-to-day needs are always changing in a person living with some type of dementia. And what we mean by that is, of course, people with dementia have good days and not so good days, just like the rest of us. And there can be a lot about the aspects of dementia that is unpredictable. So what I mean by that is a person living with some type of dementia may need help, for example, with grooming and dressing today, but may be much more capable and better able to attend to that themselves tomorrow. And then the next day can be right back to really needing our help or even more help than we've given to them in the past. So the needs are always changing. There's a lot of fluctuation. There's the physical demands of caring for a person. Again, even to just think about somebody who needs some assistance with grooming and dressing. And that may start with assistance, meaning giving more direction, giving cueing, pointing to the right clothing or to the toothbrush and the toothpaste, whatever it might be. And as those needs are changing, it becomes more hands-on. So it's not just a matter of cueing or giving more direction, but actually physically helping people to get dressed and to attend to grooming. There's sleep disruption, both for the person with dementia and the care partner. And when there's sleep disruption, daily life is just more challenging in every aspect. And I think we can all relate to that. Being sleep deprived is very debilitating. There's increased social isolation as the dementia is progressing. And part of that is because of what's going on in the person living with dementia in their brain and their ability to function, to communicate, to interact with others. But part of it is the disease process as it impacts the couple or the family and the things that are going on. It just makes it harder and harder to coordinate and make arrangements to be, for example, leaving the house and going to social situations because of the changes that are taking place with the dementia diagnosis. And then we do see more challenging behaviors occurring in people with dementia. And, I often say, the calls we get from the families who call us, and I know who call ElderHelp as well too, is not from the families that are doing everything really, really well and there's no challenging behaviors. We get the calls from the families that are struggling, the care partners that are struggling, stressed, and the behaviors are really challenging. And so it's always a good idea when we're faced with all of these challenges to look at our support networks, look at the communities we belong to, like Alzheimer San Diego, like ElderHelp, like a support group, and put our heads together so that we can come up with different ideas for one another about how to navigate these challenges. Next slide, Carrie. So yes, all of these challenges result in what we call resistance. So what is helpful, again, for all of us as care partners and family members, when we are encountering resistance, is to take a moment and remind ourselves of the process, the pathology that's going on in the brain, and to remember that there are physical changes happening in the brain. And we can see that in this visual we have. There is brain cell death going on. There is communication links being disrupted between brain cells. And so important for all of us to try and keep in mind that the resistance, the challenging behavior, is part of the symptoms of this disease, whatever type of dementia it may be. And that's important for us to know because we need to adjust how we look at things and how we communicate a little bit. Next slide. So what is happening in their brain? Well, first of all, we'll see in the temporal lobe, and Carrie, I'll have you just click for me, we're seeing changes in memory and language. Memory is the one that probably we're most familiar with. You know, we see that rapid forgetting, that short-term memory loss. So people with dementia are asking us the same question over and over again, perhaps telling the same stories over and over again. And that can be a combination of things to all of us as care partners or family members. It can be irritating, annoying, frustrating, aggravating, and all sorts of other things. But keeping in mind the picture of the brain, this is what's happening. And so they are not having control over the ability to form short-term memories. And they are also losing the ability to form language, and they're losing words, and they're also having problems with language, bringing it in, processing it, and understanding things like directions. And then when we talk about the parietal lobe, we're talking about the sensory system and dexterity. So we're seeing changes in perception of temperatures, in fine motor skills. We're seeing changes in how our sensory systems, eyes, nose, ears, again, you know, touch, what the brain is receiving in terms of signals from these senses is getting messed up. So that may mean that leaving a pot burning on the stove, the smell of the burning is not being interpreted correctly by the person with dementia. So this is leading to perhaps repeated incidents of burned food in the pot on the stove. In the occipital lobe, we are seeing changes in vision and balance. And so the visual field is getting smaller, and we're seeing changes in the ability to use good visual spatial knowledge and perception. And so this is why we do tend to see more falls occurring in people with dementia. But it's also important to remember that with those visual changes, they're getting less information. If my visual field is getting narrower, I'm starting to lose some of that information. So we need to keep that in mind. The cerebellum takes care of some of the things we don't need to think about, which is breathing, the heart beating. It is, how the diaphragm works, how we swallow, how our swallowing mechanism knows which way to send whatever it is, liquid or food or air. And lastly, in the frontal lobe, this is where we see here, the frontal lobe, which is right behind our foreheads, is where we see some altered judgment and insight, personality and behavior changes. And so with this, we see oftentimes some of those manifestations of resistance. But what we also see is behaviors that make us question, what the heck? You know, why is my dad, who has never uttered a swear word in his life, is now all of a sudden, he's swearing like a Navy sailor. No, offense to any of our Navy people out there. Why is that happening? It's because some of the filters that we have that we use in our frontal lobe are being damaged by the disease process, and it's causing altered judgment there. So filters aren't working so well. Let's go to the next one. So with all of these things going on in the brain, some of the common personality and behavioral changes we see in people with dementia is, again, the ability to make good decisions and use good judgment. And this can result in everything from being more vulnerable to being a victim of, for example, some kind of scam. It may affect decision making in terms of person maybe, for example, in the early stages of dementia, driving. Driving is a complex task that requires, really good executive function in the brain. And so for a person in the early stages of dementia, they may be just fine to drive. But as there is disease progression, the decision making, how long, I have to use judgment and decision making to know when I start braking for the red light that I see ahead. When I hear the sirens, I need to be looking around to see, is there a fire engine or an ambulance around me? And if it's behind me, I need to pull to the right. So this is where we see the impacts of dementia in these areas. Agitation and combativeness will arise out of a variety of different situations. But let me just say that primarily when agitation and combativeness is occurring, that those behaviors are communicating something to us, that there is a need that's being unmet, or there is something going on, or maybe we need to change our approach and our communication. So think about agitation and combativeness as a form of communication. Difficulty with initiation and termination of tasks is very common, and we'll start with the difficulty with initiating. So the self-starter button's not working anymore. So the default position and the default answer is always going to be no, and to be just passive, perhaps sitting in the recliner or on the couch. Mom, do you want to go for a walk with me right now? No. Mom, are you hungry? No. Do you need to go to the bathroom? No. It's time for your shower. Are you ready? No. So we need to change how we communicate so we become the initiators for these folks. We also need to change our approaches. So rather than asking those open-ended questions, we become more directive, and we do with people and not for them or to them. The same can happen with the termination of tasks. So we help them get going, but then they don't have that turn-off switch working either, as well as the turn-on switch. So then we need to keep an eye on things and be able to terminate the tasks as well too. Confabulation is something that's very common. It's when people start to fill in the gaps with information that may or may not be accurate. We all can do this to a certain extent and do. So, for example, I asked my mom, she lives alone with dementia, and I call her this morning and I say, hi, Mom, how are you doing today? And she says, good. And I said, did you have breakfast? And she says, yes. And I say, what did you have? And she says, oh, I had a piece of toast and some coffee and a little bit of cereal. And in fact, perhaps Mom did not have that at all. She doesn't remember that she didn't eat. And so she's confabulating, in which she's responding to me like she did eat. She's giving me information, filling in the gaps, but she's not lying to me. It's because she doesn't remember all of this information, and the confabulation is something that makes sense. It's kind of learned behavior in a sense. What did you have for breakfast? The default answer is what mom usually has for breakfast. Another way to look at confabulation is to think about it in terms of you and another family member. You're telling a story about an event that occurred in the family. And both of you kind of have this mostly the same story, but you have some differences there. And, the family member says, and this happened. And you say, no, 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 that's not right. It was that happened. And so you've got some differing memories of this particular event. And in these cases, again, we are missing some of that information and we're filling the gaps. Now, the only way we can find out which version is the true version is if we had a recording of the event, but we don't usually have that. And so we go along with kind of these two different viewpoints on what actually happened at that event. And that's us without a diagnosis of dementia, folks. So our people living with dementia are doing this very naturally. They can have suspicion or paranoia about those around them, trying to steal from them, trying to poison them with medication. Oftentimes what we hear is, suspicion based on the thought that you're trying to put me away somewhere, in a nursing home. And the irony in some of that is that family members may not be acting in that suspicious kind of way with ulterior motives, but in fact, they may be looking at facility placement for the person with dementia. So again, when we see suspicion or paranoia, we need to look at that a little more closely because there's some communication going on there. People with dementia often have very limited insight into their care needs. So again, what we go back to is the person who is resisting and saying, no, I don't need your help. And you're telling them, well, you do. If you remember, we were at the doctor's yesterday and you do have Alzheimer's disease. And the person says, I do not. I was not at the doctor's the other day. You are making things up. So this is a person with what we call anosognosia, which is an actual term and it's actual medical term that is defining that people have limited insight into their diagnosis and their care needs. And that happens in a lot of people with dementia. So what we go back to again is they're not lying to us. They're not trying to fool us or kid us or trick us. This is their belief. Whatever it is that they believe that they're fine living on their own, they don't need help, they haven't been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. This is their reality. Okay, let's go to the next one. Aha, so all of these things can lead once again to resistance. All right, let's go to the next. So we've kind of talked about defining resistance and the behaviors that lead to resistance. So now let's switch and see what we can do to change our communication and oftentimes approach. So next slide. All right, so let's just stop for a minute and say, really, what is resistance? Well, sometimes resistance is apathy. Not doing anything is still doing something, right? And not doing anything is oftentimes a form of resistance to us, but it's passive resistance. And so we ask mom to, take her shower or get ready to take her shower, and she's still sitting on the couch there 20 minutes from now. And I'm like, Mom, come on, I told you it's time for your shower. And mom still is just sitting there. So that's apathy, but it is showing resistance. We can have resistance in the form of arguing. We all have done that and likely still do in our lives. And arguing can take different forms, from having agreeing to disagree to having a little more heated discussions to really starting to get into it. And what are we doing when we're arguing? Well, we have different viewpoints on something, different opinions, different ideas on how something should be approached or handled, or on something that just happened. And by arguing, we really are trying to get the person we're arguing with to see our point of view and to come to agreement with us because we're right. Aren't we always right? And so arguing, we can often see happening in people with dementia. I want you to think for a minute about arguing somebody who has this lack of insight into their own care needs or their own diagnosis. Mom, I was with you. We were at the doctor's. I heard the doctor say, you have Alzheimer's disease. It's in your chart. We've got it right here. No, Mom says, that is not true. And I don't know where you got that from. And I don't know what you're trying to achieve here. This is ridiculous. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Arguing. Mom is saying, no, you are wrong and I'm right. And of course, I'm doing the same thing. I'm saying to Mom, no, you're wrong and I'm right. So we're butting heads, refusing assistance. So again, people who are needing could be everything from, let's just say, Mom is still living alone with a diagnosis of dementia, but I'm starting to see some red flags. The house she's not keeping the house up so much. There's clutter. I'm a little concerned she's going to trip. I look in the fridge and I see some food that has spoiled. And also she's having trouble paying her bills now. So we've got to get some help in and get some different supports in all of these areas. And Mom says, no, I will not allow people to come in my home. I'm doing fine. I don't need that kind of help. So refusing assistance, even if I'm standing with her and we're looking and there's the spoiled food in the fridge. And she's saying no to any idea of having, say, somebody come in and do a little, an in-home care provider who can do a little bit helping with keeping the house up, with grocery shopping, with cooking, keeping food safe and whatever it is that's being eaten safe. And it can go all the way to combativeness where, literally it's starting to escalate into the physical arena of things. And it might just be showing fists or kind of getting in that defensive positions. It could be hitting out, could be pushing away. And of course, it can sometimes escalate from there. And so combativeness, we kind of, in a way, this is a continuum of resistance, starting with apathy, escalating or elevating to arguing, to refusing assistance, and then to combativeness. So as we look at it on a continuum, what one of our goals is to try and address it and de-escalate things so it doesn't continue to grow into resistant behavior. Next slide. Yes. So with all of these things that are going on, what are people saying to us? They're saying, no. Whatever it is you want me to do, or whatever it is you think has gone on, or whatever it is you believe, the answer is no. I don't need to have a shower. I don't need your help. I didn't receive a diagnosis of dementia. And no, go away. So when there's any of these things, what the person is doing is they're communicating no. Let's see the next one. So let's just think about that for a moment. And I want all of us to just think about just a recent incident maybe where you've had a mild argument or maybe something, kind of more heated discussion or argument, or a situation where you felt threatened or frightened, or a situation where a person got too much into your personal space and a person that you didn't invite into your personal space, okay? And what happens? How do we get to the no? And how can we turn it to a yes? Well, let's understand that in this visual, you'll see there's a little kind of peanut-sized little reddish circle with the arrow pointing to it called the amygdala. And we all have these, and the amygdala is sometimes referred to as our primitive brain or our reptile brain. And the amygdala is the organ that is responsible for what we call our fight, flight, or fright responses. So when we get in these positions where, let's say, we're having a heated argument, or somebody's getting into our personal space and into our face, or, we're in a situation that is frightening or challenging or requires some kind of immediate response. And what happens? The amygdala stimulates and sends signals to our different glands and organs, and we get this release of adrenaline into our bodies. And our brains very quickly make the decision based on that situation. Are we going to fight, flight, or fright? And we can do any of those for sure. We all have this response. So let's go to the next slide. So what's happening in their brain? And when we are telling them something they don't believe or don't understand, no, I don't have Alzheimer's disease. When we are trying to get them to do something they don't want to do, and we start to get more handsy about it and more physical, and we start to get in personal space. When our voices start to rise and get louder, and we start to show in our nonverbal expressions some anger and frustration, and Mom, come on, we got to get this done. You need to get in the shower now. These are the kind of things that trigger the amygdala response in people with dementia, just as it triggers our own for those of us that are cognitively intact. So that's what's happening in their brain. They're having a normal human reaction with the veil of dementia. So what's the next one is what's happening in your brain. Same thing. So now what? We've got two individuals with amygdala responses going like this. And it's so easy for it to escalate to the point of frustration, upset, anger, hurt feelings, and not, having to kind of abandon the situation, not achieving what it was we set out to achieve in the first place. So the next slide. So what do we do when we are having this response, the amygdala response? Remember, we're the care partners, the family members. We don't have this disease process going on. So what does that mean? It means we have to take ownership and responsibility for the situation. So when these situations are happening, the first thing we can do is take a deep breath. And take a moment. If you need to leave the room, and take a moment, collect yourself, take that deep breath. Think for a moment about what you can do to influence or change the situation. Think about it if you're at the beach and you're in the waves, and think about it in the sense that, if you see a big wave coming in, let's say you're deeper in the water and you see a big wave coming in. Do you try and brace yourself in the sand, dig your feet in? Or do you take a deep breath and dive under? And the answer is, if you don't want to get swallowed by the wave or end up with, a lung full of seawater and sand, you want to dive under. You want to go with it and adapt and change and not try to stand firm with resistance. So the next slide. Yes, so we're responding versus reacting. And that's something we have to learn, you know? We kind of have to unlearn our reaction response. And the next one. So what are we talking about when we're saying reacting, which we do in the face of resistance, versus responding? So when we react, we're correcting people. We're confronting them and we're arguing with them. Mom, what are you talking about? I was with you at the doctor's. He gave you a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. And, you know, you haven't had a shower in 3 days. We need to get you in the shower. We need to get your hair washed. And so all of these things, we're correcting mom, we're confronting mom and arguing with her. Versus responding, which is validating, reassuring, and redirecting. Mom, I know this is kind of a strange situation. It's tough. I get it. It's tough for me too. I just want you to know I'm here. I'm on your side. I'm on your team. I'm here to give you the support that you need from me, that you want from me. I'll tell you what, let's just let all this go. Why don't you come have a cup of coffee with me and we'll just sit and relax and sit on the patio for a bit. So validating, reassuring, and redirecting. All right, and the next slide. So again, the reacting is the focus is on us talking. We're talking with our correcting, confronting, and arguing. When we are responding, the focus is on them because we are listening. Next. So let's talk about these communication techniques. And again, let me say these need to be learned. And I will do a shout out for another of our classes, which is called Communication Skills. It's a really good class and it's really important for people who are being impacted by a diagnosis of dementia, whether you are the person who's been diagnosed or you're the family member or care partner. We have to unlearn some of the ways we used to communicate with this person we have history with and relearn some new approaches. So a calm, reassuring tone, short, clear directions and questions, and allow plenty of time. And I always say, for whatever it is that's going to go on, I would say allow for at least twice as much time as for that event as you would have done prior to the dementia diagnosis, all the way up to maybe 2.5, 3 times the amount of time. So if I need to get mom in the shower and cleaned up and dressed and ready to go for the doctor's appointment, where that might have in the past taken maybe an hour and 15 minutes, I better budget for 2.5 hours perhaps, and maybe even a little longer, because we need to give our people with dementia more time. We need to repeat as needed for understanding, but we need to repeat things in the same way that we did the first time around. And why? Because most of us as humans, when we think somebody didn't understand what it was we just said to them or the information we just gave to them, our tendency is to over-explain. So we go into more detail, more information in an effort to help them understand. Not helpful for a person with dementia. All you're doing is adding more stuff to be processed, right? So we need to repeat as needed and repeat in the same way. Validate and agree. And lastly, forgive and apologize. And sometimes we need to apologize for things that aren't really our fault. And sometimes it's broad apologies and sometimes it's smaller. Mom says, I don't know about this doctor's appointment. You didn't tell me about this. And the reality is it's been on her calendar. It's on her whiteboard. We've talked about it every day for the past 5 days. I've given her multiple reminders. And the morning of, she's mad and she's saying, you didn't tell me. And I say, oh, gosh, Mom, I am so sorry. I thought I did tell you. It must have slipped my mind. I'm really sorry about this. My bad. But I'll tell you what, we've already got this appointment. How about we get ready and like just do it and get it over and done with? So I'm taking the blame for her not being told about the appointment, which I actually did do. Okay, next slide. So, and what this slide is telling us is something that is good advice for all of us, which is to talk less and listen more. And that kind of is counterintuitive for us as well, again, with this idea of over-explaining. But in fact, it's really good if we talk less and listen more. And communication can be vastly improved by doing that. That might just be true in a lot of different situations, whether there's a diagnosis of dementia or not. All right, next slide. Tips for providing help to someone who is resisting your assistance, saying no. Let's take a look at a few. So, and these are just general. And let me just say too, we have classes and webinars, recorded webinars in our webinar library on what we call skills clinics, in which we focus in on specific tasks and kind of break them down and give you concrete tips on how to go about these tasks when you're encountering resistance. So we have one on bathing and grooming. We have one on meal times and eating. Gosh, what else? There's 2 or 3 others, and right off the top of my head, I can't think of the others, but specific to those situations, okay? But generally, when providing care, remember again, the visual of the brain and the dementia is causing this progressive loss of function, okay? Both in cognition, memory, problem solving, executive function, as well as physically, again, the changes to vision, visual field, to balance, to sensory perception, to all sorts of other things. So across the board, causing progressive loss of function. Our goal is autonomy, not independence. And so I want you to think again about all these situations of apathy, arguing, refusing assistance, hands-on assistance, to combativeness, all these things that are communicating no. What's behind the no? Why are people living with dementia communicating no to us? And perhaps it's because they are seeking to preserve their autonomy. Mama is saying to herself, or to me, I'm a grown adult. I know if I've been to the doctor or not, and I certainly would know if I received a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or not. I don't need you managing my life. I don't need you telling me what to do. I don't need any of this, and it's, I don't appreciate it, and it's disrespectful, and so forth. That's Mom protecting her autonomy. And we all have that in us, and we all respond in that way. So our goal is to respect and preserve that autonomy. We're not seeking to help them remain independent. They are going to become dependent on us, but we can still maintain autonomy. How do we do that? By giving choices, by validating, by focusing on strengths, what people can still do versus what they can't do. by working together, and some of these other things by setting reasonable expectations. This person is not the same person that they were previous to the diagnosis of dementia. So we need to adjust expectations. We need to, and we need to, in some ways, help them to adjust their own expectations. We can do that by modeling that. So Mom used to cook a big Thanksgiving meal, and it was beautiful and perfect. And now she's not able to do that, and she's struggling with that. And you can see it's really, she's feeling really maybe depressed or sad or upset about that. So what do? We adjust expectations. Mom, you come in the kitchen here with me and help me. I'll do the work, but you tell me what I should be doing. So how do I get this turkey ready? Tell me what you would do, rather than expecting Mom to do that on her own. Remain flexible. Oh my gosh, this is so important. And it can be very hard because some days we don't have enough kind of gas in the tank to remain flexible, which often means remaining patient and forgiving and a whole bunch of other qualities that we might have in short supply at that moment. But if we can do it, that's a good place to be, is being flexible. And lastly, and this is, again, I said it before, and this is really important, do tasks with the person, not to them or for them. And this goes back to autonomy, right? Respecting autonomy. All right, next slide. So yes, honor those routines and rituals and personal preferences as much as you can. Think about dementia-friendly environments. So, uncluttered, minimal distractions, really good lighting, and a comfortable setting, comfortable temperature, comfortable chair, let's say, whatever, like in the bathroom. And when I have a shower, I want the bathroom door closed because I hate coming out of the shower into what I consider to be a blast of cold air. So think about those things. Consider time of day. We all have a time of day that's better for us versus a time of day that's not where we are at our best. The good time of day is when we want to try and achieve some of these things we've been talking about, like showering, dressing, having doctor's appointments, etc. Again, provide that validation and reassurance. Make your requests positive and action-oriented with simple direction. Give choices, but limit them. 2 choices is plenty good. What would you like for lunch today, Mom? Soup or a sandwich? Again, do with not 2 or 4, and respect autonomy. And next. Okay, I think we have time, and if technology is going to work with us, we're going to take a look at this video, which you can see the URL at the bottom. And this is through UCLA Health, and they have a whole section with caregiver training videos, and this is just one of them. And so let's have a look at it. This one is refusal to take medication. And let's go, Carrie. Okay, looks like maybe we're not able to see this actual video on medications, but that's fine. You heard Patty Davis speaking, and she speaks really well about these caregiver training videos, education videos through UCLA Health. And I really would encourage all of you to check that out. I think you're going to get a copy of the slides that we presented today. And if not, then Carrie, I know, will send out an email with this, the link to these videos. And what I can tell you in this video, it's kind of cute in a way, I find, because in it, this is a granddaughter trying to give grandma her medication. and grandma doesn't want to take it, and the daughter, you know, has the pills in her hand, and she gives grandma a glass of water, and she's trying to convince her to take the meds, and grandma bats out with her hand and sends the glass of water flying across the room and says there's no way she's taking it. And then the second video, it's the same people, you know, these are actors, and they redo the scene, and the granddaughter tries a different approach. And in it, she has, you see this piece of paper, it's a letter from Dr. Jones saying that he would like his patient, Mrs. Smith, to take these medications for her heart condition. And grandma's a little reluctant, and she says, well, I don't know about that. And then daughter talks a little bit more with her, and grandma agrees to take them today, but maybe not tomorrow. And the granddaughter says that sounds good. And I think the granddaughter says she's going to take her pills as well too. So they sit together on the couch and take their medications. And so it's just, again, showing, you know, it's validation, it's reassurance, it's letting the grandmother know she's been heard, respecting autonomy. It's doing with and not to or for, by sitting with her and saying, I'll take my medications too. Plus, she has this piece of paper that's from the doctor, an authority figure that grandma has some level of respect for. And so it's not just the daughter saying, you need to do this, and standing over her with the medications and the glass of water. So it's just a whole different approach to things. And it's really good. So when you get a chance, please do go and take a look at this video and all the others too. All right, let's continue on here, Carrie. Yeah, so take a deep breath. And again, think about what it is we can do to help change or influence or respond better rather than reacting in any of these situations. And so lastly, next slide, we're going to take a look just at some resources for additional support. And so the next one is, okay, let's go back to that visual of being on the beach in the water and the waves are coming in. You know, don't swim alone. And of course, what this means, folks, is you can't do this alone along this road of dementia, Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. You can't do it alone. I've been at this long enough. I will tell you with certainty, the families that I've worked with that have tried to do it alone have not succeeded and has often had negative consequences in terms of caregiver stress, impact on health, but some of that also then impacting the person with dementia. You need to engage with others. You need to educate yourself, to improve your skills, to acquire new techniques and methods and approaches to doing things. And some of this is going to help reduce your anxiety levels, your stress levels. Identify those resources in the community like Alzheimer San Diego and like ElderHelp, and engage with them. That's what we're here for, is to provide support, information, education, and resources to the families we serve. Get a break. Nobody can be a care partner 24/7 with no break. And that is what is required of care partners of people with dementia, certainly at some point in the disease process, where you know it's a 24/7 job. So you need a break. We can help with that. So can ElderHelp. There's other organizations that can help too. So find those supports that can provide you with a safe atmosphere for coping with daily challenges. So think about your support network. Who in your network, who is the person you know you could call a person that lives here in the county and maybe not so far from you, hopefully, who is the person you could call at midnight on a Saturday night when the you know what is hitting the fan with some kind of incident with the person with dementia? Not enough to call 911, but enough that you need some help, some ideas, some support. You maybe need to express frustration or cry some tears or whatever it is. Who's the person you can count on, that you can call, that they'll pick up the phone and answer it, and that if you tell them, I need you here right now, that they will get in the car and come over at midnight on Saturday night. So we all need to have at least one of these people and hopefully 2 or 3 more. So don't swim alone, folks. It's not a good practice. And so next slide. There's Alzheimer's San Diego and all the different programs and services we have. Our dementia experts are our clinical staff, and they are answering the phones Monday through Friday, normal business hours, 8:30 to 5. Whatever you're looking for, be it information, lists, for example, lists of neurologists or lists of adult day programs, tip sheets, any of those things, whatever you're looking for, we probably have it. So don't feel like you need to do the research. It's already been done. And so call us. But you can also call us just to talk about your particular situation, to ask one of our clinical coaches to do some problem solving with you about, we've got this situation where mom is showing great resistance. What are some tips and ideas on how we can handle this better, how we can approach it better? We have social activities and outings for people with dementia and their care partners, obviously education and training, including the webinar library I referenced, where you can watch some of these previously recorded webinars. Local research and memory screenings, a Vitals program for people living alone in the community with a diagnosis of dementia. Support groups, both virtual and in person, our respite program, which is where we have volunteers, trained volunteers, go into the home for up to 4 hours per week to spend time as a companion to the person with dementia to give the primary care partner a break. All of these things and all of the things that ElderHelp does, in addition to other community resources. Please use these resources. Again, that's what we're here for. And all of our programs and services at Alzheimer's San Diego are at no cost. So that's what we have for today, folks, in managing resistance. And we've got some time, as I was attempting to budget for, and I seem to have done, for questions or comments or whatever we might have from participants.
Well, thank you so much, Jean, for sharing all of that helpful information and helping to understand, what's going on in the brain and the changes, and then, of course, those tips for how to approach situations differently. And I will be sending a recorded version of this webinar, so you'll get a link to that so you can rewatch, and I will include the videos. For some reason it didn't pop up with the actual video that you had wanted, so my apologies for that. So I will send that along so that everybody can have access to it. But thank you for sharing all of that. I encourage anybody to submit any questions. You can type them into the question pane. We did get one question that came in so far. So the question is, if you have any tricks for helping with personal hygiene after a bowel movement. This has become a confusing process and often results in incomplete cleaning and is a major resistance trigger. So obviously we know this is something that happens on a regular basis. So I think it is important to bring that up. So thank you for your question. And Jean, do you have any tips or suggestions for this individual?
Yeah, this can be a tough one. What I'll say, this is not going to help in this situation right now, but let me just throw this out there. is, I think and I would include myself in this, as we are getting older, and if you haven't heard about it or done so already, honestly, I am recommending every house has a bidet, a toilet that is a bidet, and that we learn how to use them and get comfortable with them, as we are aging and or before cognitive decline occurs, because that is the absolute best way to get the the genital and the anal area clean after eliminating, because it's warm water. It reduces the need for all that toilet paper and all that movement and kind of friction, the rubbing that goes on in order to keep clean. It also reduces the risk of infections happening because of transfer of bacteria. I don't think it would be easy to introduce a bidet to somebody who is already in process with the disease. That would be something that's too alarming to all of a sudden have this spray of water coming up to your, what I call your undercarriage. So in this instance, I think some of the things that I have learned when I was working in memory care is, in order to be able to clean people properly, here's a couple of the things that we need to do. And it, again, requires a change in approach and requires more kind of physical setup and thought on the part of the care partner. But we want to try and be in front of them. So they're sitting on the toilet, be in front of them and looking into their eyes, eye contact. And so they finished a bowel movement and now we need to clean. So looking at them in the eye and saying, okay, is it okay if I help you a little bit to get clean down there? And what you're hoping for is some kind of response. And if you're getting resistance, just say, I really, I really care about you and I'd like to help you be clean. Will you let me help you be clean? And, I think go with any of the wipes that you can get. Let me just caution though, you do really have to be careful that they are flushable and really truly flushable. Sometimes any of the wipes, whether they're marketed as baby wipes or adult wipes, they often say they're flushable, but they're not. So, and you can get some that are larger size, okay? So get the larger size ones. And again, trying to really maintain eye contact. Now, if you need the person then to stand up, and let's say they're using a walker or using bars to help them stand up so you can get to the private parts, as best as you can to maneuver yourself around them so you can maintain eye contact with them while you're cleaning the area by touch with the wipey. Having that eye contact seems to mitigate some of the strangeness we may feel, either as the person helping to keep them clean or the person receiving the care. Eye contact, it seems counterintuitive, but in fact, eye contact can make it much easier to do that. So you're kind of maneuvering yourself. But again, do your best to try and get permission. That was kind of a messy one. How about, would you let me help you to get a little bit cleaner? Use your sense of humor, folks. Make some jokes a little bit. Lighten up the situation. And again, really try your best to not get frustrated and uptight. It's a situation that would make any of us uptight, okay? So we have to kind of, first of all, get over that. And look, in the end, if you feel like you haven't been able to get the person as clean as you would like, get one of those pads on the bed, you know, the big ones. Get them to sit on the bed. Maybe then you can get them to lie down. Then you can roll them over so that you can clean around the anal area a little bit better. So, and that might need to happen a little later on in the day. Sometimes that's how it is. For sure, cleanliness in the anal and the genital areas is very important. So we do the best we can. And then with showering as well too, handheld shower. And again, saying, can we give your undercarriage a little rinse down there? And either having them you hold the handheld shower, or maybe you do a hand over hand with it, so that you can get some good spray and some good warm water. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Jean. I don't see any other questions coming in at this time. So if anybody has anything else, feel free to type them in and we can go through that. Again, I will send a copy of the slides as well as a link to the recorded version of the webinar. So if you know somebody who wasn't able to make it today, please feel free to send that along to them so that they can have access. But do remember to reach out if you have any additional questions. And also Alzheimer San Diego has a lot of great educational resources on their website. So I encourage you, as Jean had shared, to visit their website. They have a lot of different recorded webinars and tip sheets. So hopefully you'll find some helpful information there to assist with your situations if they come up after today. Thank you. So no other questions, it looks like. Just thank you for the information. And so I know that those who are here today really appreciated all of those suggestions and helping to understand what's going on with the brain. So thank you, Jean, for that again. And if anybody has any further questions, feel free to reach out to us, but you'll get a follow-up email from me shortly. So thank you again for joining, and we hope you have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, Carrie, and thanks to ElderHelp, as always. Always good to partner with you folks. So take care, everyone. We'll see you again.
Thank you. Bye.